So let's say you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
All right, everybody, welcome to Kent with Bent 81, The Dummy, which of course is a play on the classic Universal horror movie, The Mummy, starring Boris Karloff as the titular mummy Imhotep. Not necessarily the Brandon Fraser one. I might have a dummy like redo with an all full color thumbnail. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
The dummy returns.
Yeah, well, that would yeah. There you go. The dummy returns, and I'll use like the Brandon Fraser stuff, and maybe I can use The Rock as the Scorpion King with his full PlayStation 2 graphics glory.
It's Dwayne Johnson.
Well, it was The Rock at the time.
Was it?
Yeah.
That was it Dwayne The Rock?
Yeah, it might have been Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Anyway, guys, you might have noticed, but we have an extra guest here. Normally, there's only Bent and I. Sometimes there's, very occasionally we have a guest. And this is going to be a somewhat unusual guest, because I don't think I've ever had a creationist on for Kent with Bent before.
Well, I'm honored.
Well, it's a very short list of people I would bring on for creationists on a Kent with Bent, Sal. So,
well, I have the worst of motives, of course. Is I'd like to kind of help quash my competition, and Dapper Dino has been just doing a fabulous job of making him look worse, which makes me look better. So, just if people were curious why I'm doing this, and I'm a creationist, I'm just being upfront here, guys.
Well, the thing is, Sal, you know enough about most of the things that Kent says to know why Kent is bad at this. So,
well, he's let's say his science may be horrible and the way he runs his life, but I looked at both his and his son's 990s, which are public record. Between the two of them, they're making $1 million each year.
Ooh. Wow.
Okay, so I'd like a little piece of the pie.
As long as they don't love that money, they're okay, right?
Right, yeah, because once they start loving that money, then that's the root of all evil. So they better watch out. Yeah, that's a lot of money, man. I guess there really is a whole lot of money in just lying to people online.
I look at him as like the Jim Baker of creationism. I mean, how did these guys do it? And it says in the Bible about people that go after the gullible, and I'm afraid that may be the case. And it really is a blight on Christianity and on other creationists. So I'm here to also learn, because Dapper, you teach me a lot.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I recommend many creationists to come on this channel and just learn. Many of you know that I worked for Dr. John Sanford, who's a young Earth creationist, and he's a geneticist. He paid money out of his own pocket to send me off to school. He didn't send me off to Dinosaur Adventureland. And I got to learn under evolutionary biologists, and I got to tell you that I learn even more here. So it's a privilege to be here. And even if I don't agree with all the arguments, I think there are things that I've encouraged creationists to learn and to study and say, hey, maybe when Dapper says this is a bad argument, you should consider it.
Yeah. By the way, we have a $4.99 super chat. That's $4.99 US from Scott Duke, who says, "It's a new month. Gotta pay my Dapper dues." It is a new month. Actually, I do want to say, before we get to the drinking rules, because that's what's up next, I want to say a very, very heartfelt thank you to my audience, because I was telling some of my supporters on the Patreon Discord server this, but I want to make it a little bit more widely known. Basically, I work on this channel, and Bent can attest to this, usually between 40 and 60 hours a week.
I haven't done the math. It's gotta be 80.
Maybe it is.
It has to be.
I'm being conservative.
It has to be.
And for most of the channel's history, it was losing money. However, for the past few months, it has been in the black, and that is in large part a result of the support on Patreon, on YouTube memberships, super chats, guys sharing my videos, and things like that. So I really want to say thank you guys very much, because quite frankly, working on a YouTube channel that much is a gigantic gamble, but you guys are making it so that it is a gamble that's currently paying out. And Tiktaalik for 100 Argentinian pesos says, now that I'm at the amniote level, I do have to become something like Caesarina, or can I stay a glorious basal tetrapod? So as far as the like logos go, if you're a channel member, that just changes with time. However, you know what? If you're at the amniote level, I'm going to go ahead and say you can become any kind of amniote that you want, as long as it's not part of the next tier up, which of course is Sauropsid. You got to stay out of the Sauropsid group. But thank you very much, guys. But let's get into the drinking rules, because this is a drinking stream. Because, quite frankly, Kenthoven is bad enough that the last time I watched some Kenthoven, without that, it was kind of destructive to my sanity. So
Now you know how I feel every time.
I know. I don't know how you do it.
I don't know how you do it. I mean, you're like the Kenthoven scholar. I could hardly take even 1 hour of him, and
My
it
goodness.
makes me shudder how many thousands of hours you may have invested in studying what he has to say.
And it's
It
all
helps
dumb.
It helps growing up, watching him on TV and believing what he says for the first 35 years.
Oh, hey, there's one of our drink triggers. That is Mothra. Take a drink for Mothra, everybody. So, Mackenzie Brown says, Sal is here, excited, welcome Sal. And that is because Mackenzie Brown has a milestone chat for being a member at the tetrapod level for 2 months. So thank you very much for joining the channel at the tetrapod level, Mackenzie Brown. I really appreciate it. So one of our drink triggers is fairly random, and it is that occasionally either Godzilla or Mothra will stop by audibly. We take a drink. Also, if you are a channel member, that gives you access to the channel emojis, which include Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. And if you super chat and your super chat includes any of those, we'll take a drink for that. The other option for you guys, if you want to make us drink, is that if you super chat something to the effect that AIG are a bag of dicks, we'll take a drink for that. And of course, that was started because, well, quite frankly, they demonetize basically every video that I put up responding to them. Sorry about that. And so basically, I have to put the video up more than a month in advance, or it gets demonetized and I can't make money off of it, and YouTube won't promote it when I actually premiere it. So yeah, it's very annoying. It's very cowardly. So yeah, if you can super chat something to that effect, you do have to be a little creative, because YouTube will censor it if you just type that straight in. And also, Benthoven Norrelation, who's been a member for 23 months at the tetrapod levels, says, go subscribe to Sal. The link is in the title. It is. So the title has in parentheses featuring at Evidence and Reasons. That will bring you to Sal's channel.
Open it in a new tab.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
New
see you
tab, and
next time.
then subscribe to Sal. And Erechamian for $20 says, Nukbotuktach. Extra text because it won't send the chat otherwise. Let's see. Well, I am drinking gin and tonic. Bent?
Yeah, this is a fancy strawberry lemonade flavored water
Okay.
with water ice.
Nice.
And in addition, I have green tea.
Ooh.
And I can even refill it with this guy. And for a little citrus, I zested an orange from my orange tree.
Oh, very fancy.
Because those oranges are disgusting. But the zest is good.
Sal?
Cranberry ginger ale.
Very good. All right. Oh, by the way, Nukbotuktach is in fact Klingon for what are you all drinking?
Okay.
So, thank you very much, Erechamian. So, the other drinking rules are, we drink whenever Kenthoven is just so stupid that I just kind of have to, for the sake of my own sanity, which is probably our most common drink trigger. We also drink whenever he actually gets a factual statement correct that isn't just him quoting from someone else. We get more generous with that throughout the night. So, you know. We also take a drink whenever Kenthoven tells a story that didn't happen. Whenever Kenthoven mentions, you know, the National Socialist German Workers' Party or prominent members thereof, or, you know, their various activities in like the 30s and 40s, 1930s and 40s. We take drinks for that. If you don't know what that means, go check it out. I'm making sure that I don't get demonetized already. Let's see. We take drinks. What am I missing, Bent? You got the list.
Yeah, I do. Did you mention the predictions and the shower thoughts?
Right. So the story that didn't happen, which is basically just Kent doing some shower thoughts, and then thinking they're real. But yeah, predictions. So if one of us thinks that we know where Kent is going with an argument where it's not clear, we can call it as a prediction, and if the prediction turns out to be correct, we'll take a drink for that. So I think that covers it. There might be more that I remember later, because you know what? There's a lot of drinking rules, as any good drinking game should have. So they're carefully calibrated so that I don't get so in the bag that I can't function anymore, but so that I also don't just hate every second of listening to Kent Hovind, because that's a fine line to walk right there.
Also, they're more of a guideline, and drink water also, and
Yes.
drink responsibly.
Yes, do drink responsibly, especially because we take no responsibility or liability for any death, dismemberment, bodily injury, harm to others, destruction of property, or anything else like that. That is up to you. Feel free to play along without alcohol, or don't play along at all, or play in some other way if you don't want to drink or you can't safely drink. So, I think with that, Sal, are you ready? Bent, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, here we go.
I'm
Kent
ready.
Hovind was just telling us about how horrible vaccines are because, of course, he's an anti-vaxxer, because he's all of the dumb things except flat Earth. And I'm convinced the only reason he's not flat Earth is because it wasn't popular when he was growing up. If he were growing up in like if Kent Hovind were 20, he'd be a flat Earther.
Now, Satan's goal is to reduce the population of the Earth.
I think we covered it last time, but like, why? Like, okay, so if we take this sort of general idea of Satan from like, sort of Christian tradition, we get the idea that he's this opponent of God who wants to lead God's children, the humans, astray in order to make, I guess, in order to spite God, right? He doesn't like God. God doesn't want all of his creations to be damned, so Satan wants them to be damned. So if anything, it seems like Satan would want there to be a lot of people so that he can corrupt a lot of them. But like, I don't see his motive for wanting there to just not be many people. I mean, Sal, maybe do you have a reason why Satan would want there to be few people that makes sense to you?
I've never heard that from, I mean, I've been in church for like years, decades. I've
Yeah.
never heard that specifically preached on. So
It doesn't make any sense to me. Like,
my policy is if you add arguments that don't help where you're going, it's a bad thing. So I'm just going to note this and say that's something I'm not going to say.
yeah.
So guess who would be behind something like this?
By this he means vaccines.
God's plan is to fill the Earth. God would not be behind a situation like this.
I think the Earth is pretty full. I don't.
Oh no, but remember
Is
everyone
it because
could
we're not
stand-
all right? Because we're
everyone
not
could
all in the
physically
Grand Canyon,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah,
I feel like basically everywhere that is inhabitable, we've got people inhabiting.
yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
So I mean, there are still places where people can go move to that don't currently have any human habitation, but overall, the planet's been creeping up its carrying capacity as farming, techniques improve, and also human population has been creeping up right along with it. And there are other problems with, how many people can fit on Earth, because despite the fact that, yeah, it's true, like Kent says, you could fit the entire population of the Earth in a relatively small area of land if they all are just standing shoulder to shoulder. They have to be fed and sheltered, and they have to have clean water and sanitation, and like all of this is a thing. You need more space to live than just what it takes for you to physically stand. Like, that's not going to cut it. And so, yeah, it is the case that there are places where there's probably too many people. There are still probably some places where you could fit some more people. But yeah, overcrowding isn't about physically running out of space, like we said before, despite the fact that that's how Kent frames the argument. I don't know why he thinks that straw man is convincing, but that's how it is.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know why either.
this is an article from marytoko.com's website.
This was before they got married.
This is an article by, or a statement from Dr. Howard Ernovitz. And by the way, he's no slouch. He has a PhD, a degree in microbiology from University of Michigan, Department of Pathology at Washington University. He's the director of molecular and cellular engineering at Zoma Corporation, a senior scientist, Institute of Cancer Medical Research Institute of San Francisco. He developed a cat vaccine against feline leukemia. Okay.
Cool.
That's all cool stuff. I love that stuff.
He says he believes HIV is a hybrid monkey virus.
I mean, I don't know about hybrid, but
I don't know about that.
it is a monkey virus in that it infects monkeys, and it is closely related to SIV, the simian immunovirus, which infects non-human monkeys. Hence the name. Goopdo3 for $2 US says, "Can't fill Earth if people die of preventable diseases." Yeah, that's true. The anti-vaxxers are definitely not the pro-fill in the Earth crowd. Thank you, Goopdo3. That was really good, actually. I like that one.
That was in the polio vaccine, given to 26 million Americans between 55 and 61 in the form of a sugar cube.
Okay, I'm going to take a big old drink, and then we're going to talk about why, no, there's no good reason to think that the polio vaccine contained HIV. Okay, first, you would expect higher prominence of HIV infection among people who have received the polio vaccine, but I've never seen anything that would even hint that that's the case. Second, if it were the case that when polio vaccination was widespread, that it was carrying HIV, you would expect there to have been reports of the symptoms of HIV and AIDS in the 60s and the 70s. Instead, no one really noticed it until the 80s. And even then, it wasn't prominently among, say, polio vaccine recipients. It was prominently specifically amongst homosexual men. In fact, at one point, it was called, quote, the gay disease, because while other people were getting it, that particular population was at an absurdly high risk at the time.
It was called GRID, gay-related immunodeficiency, or something like that.
Right. And so the reason for this is because without the knowledge that this disease was, spreading around, and especially since it can take up to a few years to develop symptoms, well, certain activities that gay men tend to participate in cause very high incidence of transmission if it's unprotected. And so that's why it was circulating in that population so prominently. But why wasn't it doing so in the 60s or the 70s? There were gay men in the 60s and the 70s. I don't think that their sexual practices varied that much between the 60s and the 80s. I don't know. I guess I could do a survey. But, if it were the case that HIV came from the polio vaccine, we should have seen the first cases, one, not strongly correlated with sexual identity, and two, earlier, by at least a decade. And we don't see that. So it doesn't make sense. In order to say that there's this link, you need to do a lot of work that Kent isn't going to do. Sal, I know you want to say something.
Okay, so the polio vaccine, it was declared the United States was polio-free around 1979. I didn't know that off the top of my head. It's a nice thing when you talk, I can Google. I actually got the polio vaccine. I remember taking the sugar cube when I was a kid. So if this were true, that's kind of disturbing, but, I think I'll go with what you had to say. I can rest easy at night.
I think you're pretty safe from HIV transmitted via polio sugar cube.
Yeah, you probably know by now.
Yeah.
If you got infected from
My
that.
goodness.
Probably.
But you know what? I mean, okay, and I got on a tirade about this before. Kent is going to be saying how bad vaccines are. I got to tell you, when you see the people that have suffered polio, I thank God every day for what Jonas Salk did and gave the polio vaccine to little kids like me. Yeah. I didn't have fear of that. So,
if you've never seen,
so I just gotta, this is what makes my blood boil when I hear stuff like this. Yeah. So people wonder why I'm on the show tonight. This is one of the reasons right here.
Iron lungs really, really suck. It's far worse than just being wheelchair bound, right? You can't go anywhere. You can't move at all you can do is stare at the ceiling for your entire life. That's it. That's all you got. Yeah, it's pretty horrible. We'll keep going.
How many of you got the sugar cube polio vaccination? I did. You did. 3, 4, 5, 6,
Weird, Kent. How, as far as I know, you don't have HIV.
7. It's a big deal. You go in, you got this little sugar cube with this drop of red fluid in there, and you eat it. All the kids in school lined up to do it. I'm convinced my oldest brother got polio from the vaccine.
How?
I'm convinced he didn't.
Yeah, me too.
Now, he didn't get real crippled by it. He has one leg shorter than the other. I do too. Partially one leg about a quarter inch shorter, not much. But
That doesn't... Okay, look.
I guess you got it a little bit too then, Kent?
I'm going to take a drink, and then we're going to talk about asymmetry in humans. Like most animals with bilateral symmetry, most individual humans are not perfectly symmetrical. So attributing minor variations in symmetry to polio from a polio vaccine that apparently also contained HIV makes very little sense, since the parsimonious explanation for why two brothers might both be a little bit asymmetrical is that it's just a quirk of their genetics. Right? Like, that's all it has to be. It's much more likely, especially since, slight deviations from complete perfect symmetry are well known in humans and always have been. So, yeah. Okay, Ken, sure. Let's keep going for now.
my parents started a club in Peoria, Illinois called the WOW Club, Walking or Wheeling. It was a
What was
club
the
for people in
password to get in?
wheelchairs.
Good question.
Was it ABC Twinkie?
I grew up, from the time I can remember, going to activities, bowling, picnics, parties, and stuff with the WOW Club that my parents started, because I grew up with these people in wheelchairs. Many, many, many of them from polio. It was real common I was born in 53, very common in the 50s. Then they claimed they got the cure for polio. I'm not convinced they did.
They didn't. They got a vaccine for polio. Those aren't the same thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about preventative versus curative type of medicine, right? So preventative medicine is there to make sure that you don't get whatever the condition is. So for instance, if you're out to sea for extended periods of time, taking some citric acid, vitamin C, will help you prevent scurvy. But once you get scurvy, now you have scurvy, and if it goes on long enough, some of those effects are permanent. Similarly, vaccine, and this is not identical, I know, don't at me about the fact that this is not a perfect analogy, I'm aware. A vaccine for polio prevents you from getting polio. But if you currently have polio, taking the vaccine isn't going to do anything. It's the same thing now. There are people currently who've been hospitalized for COVID-19 begging for the vaccine, only to be told it won't help. You had to get it
rabies. I mean, that's how vaccines. Yeah, that's how vaccines tend to work.
Yeah. There are some examples where if you get it early enough in the process of the disease, it can in fact be curative, like rabies and tetanus. Those are some exceptions to the general rules about these things. But yeah, the polio vaccine is not to cure polio, it's to prevent you from getting polio. Okay.
To change the name and got the symptoms of the...
Oh, thanks. You see, this is where if he has imprecise language, he can just start introducing falsehoods, because there's a distinction, as you said, between a vaccine and a cure. But in some people's minds, he can make it seem like it is the same thing, and that is significant. So I'm going to make a prediction. He's going to say this was a lie, that they didn't really have a cure. So he'll actually make a false accusation that they claimed a cure, and because it wasn't a cure, he can actually say, well, that wasn't true, that they didn't get a cure. So, okay, let's see if do we get drinking points for making a prediction?
Not for making it, for it being confirmed. Because remember, confirmed predictions are the key.
I came out here. All right, we'll see if it comes true.
By the way, apparently we ruined Cheshire Vic's streak of not drinking. So, sorry, Chesh.
little different. Now call it, something else, multiple sclerosis or something.
Oh my
I don't know.
goodness. Oh no, it's worse. He's now saying that polio is still around. We're just pretending it's other diseases. I'm taking a drink. For multiple scoliosis is just a code word for polio after a conspiracy to pretend that polio has been cured.
Hey, does that count as a confirmed prediction?
You know what? He definitely told a lie about like some weird conspiracy. So yeah, I'm gonna go for it. We'll drink twice.
Right. Two drinks.
There you go.
I'm going to assume your prediction was what you said or something worse, and it was clearly worse. So I'll count it.
Yeah. My goodness, guys. Multiple sclerosis and other diseases tend not to have the same symptoms as polio. They're not polio by a different name. Like
Well, sclerosis, not scoliosis.
Oh, that's sorry about that. Also, apparently, we broke Cheshire Vic's 1 day streak of not drinking.
But there's a lot of folks who are really suspicious about this. I don't think they fixed it. I think or like when they started.
Yeah, he is saying that exactly what Sal said at that point.
Getting diseases that were carried in sick cows, and they said, we got to pasteurize the milk. So they start pasteurizing the milk, which kills almost everything good in the milk.
No, it doesn't. So pasteurization does break down some of the proteins in milk. I mean, that's true. So in a marginal sense, there is slightly fewer of the complex molecules that have some nutritive value, but overall, it's not a significant difference. It's like the difference between a leaf of lettuce that's been steamed versus the same leaf unsteamed. You're not getting significantly different nutrition from them. And yeah, milk is much, much, much safer because, I mean, quite frankly, cow milk can transmit diseases if it's not pasteurized. So I'm not going to tell you what you should eat or drink, but I will tell you you're more likely to get sick from non-pasteurized milk than you are from pasteurized milk, and nutritionally, they're virtually identical.
And then some of the diseases go away. Well, at the same time, they started inspecting the herds for sick cows and not taking milk from sick cows.
Yes, these are both good practices. The reason for this is that you will miss cows, and you can only inspect an entire herd so often, but disease can spread between checks, right? So if you have a herd of, say, 1,000 head of cattle, and you decide you're going to check all your cows for disease, to check thoroughly, each cow is going to take a while. You're not going to be able to get through 1,000 cows in, say, a day. And you're not going to be able to do daily health checks on every single cow because you have too many. So, disease still spreads among cows, but yes, it is a good idea to identify sick cows when you can and isolate them. Don't take milk from them. Or, actually, you do still have to milk them, but don't sell that milk. Just get rid of it. And, keep them quarantined while they're sick. Great. But that's not going to be foolproof.
So how do you know which one caused the effect?
Because, Kent, you can do an experiment. You can say, does isolating sick cows reduce disease in milk? Okay. Does pasteurization, independent of that, reduce disease in milk? And the answer for both of those is going to be yes, Kent. You can measure them separately because you can do experiments.
And it's pretty obvious that both are going to be beneficial. Why does he have to pretend it's only one or the other? And he actually phrased it weird, as if one caused the other.
Yeah, it's very confusing. And yes, by the way, it was pointed out that I am coming up on the 10,000 mark. I've had over 700 subscribers in the last month, which is kind of weird for me. So, very nice. Thank you guys. All right, here we go.
Is it the pasteurization, or is it the inspecting the herds and not taking milk from sick cows?
Or is it both? Which is what it is. It's both, Kent. It's both. It's like, which one is going to save your life? An airbag or a seatbelt? You can do both. You don't have to do one. You can do both. It's fine.
Of course, guess who took the credit? Pasteurization, cured the problem. I would be real cautious about believing that too.
I've already said it.
This
is a taught science for 15 years. You'd think he'd believe in pasteurization.
I know, it's so basic.
Oh my gosh.
Hey,
And
did you know that
No.
sterilizing things makes them less likely to spread disease? Who'd have thought?
where did he get this idea? I mean, is there been, in at least with one of the prior things about HIV, he at least tried to cite someone.
So,
He's just, this is like, does this count up as a made up story? I guess not, but still.
Maybe.
yeah, so I'm thinking he gets this from a combination of Mary Toko, who is sort of a natural news type person, and the late Bill Sardi, who actually just died, I think, this year or late last year, probably of COVID. As an anti-vaxxer, he, according to Kent, ended up in the hospitals all of a sudden, needed to be ventilated, and then was shortly after that dead.
Hmm.
Sounds a whole lot like a COVID-19 death. I can't say for certain, but if Kent is at all accurate about that, then yeah. And both of these people, Bill Sardi and Mary Toko, are anti-vaxxers who are big into like alternative health things like, oh, if you eat like all natural foods and avoid anything processed, you'll never get diseases, which, okay, there's something to be said for eating healthy. It's really, really important. Your body's going to do a whole lot better if you're eating healthy, but not going to stop you from getting infections or cancer. Like, so yeah, I think that's where he gets this, because he was friends with both of them at this point. With the Mary Toko, you have to wonder how close they were, since it took 2 months after his divorce until he was quote unquote married to Mary Toko.
Mary Toko has this on her website of
No, speak of devil.
all the states. I just picked a few here in alphabetical order. The percent of increase in autism just over a 10-year span. Did you know Illinois back in '92 had only 5 kids with autism, and then they got 3,800 kids with autism in 2001 and 2?
Wow.
Okay, so one, we're going to take a drink for vaccines cause autism, because one, no, they don't. Also, even if they did, you know what's worse than autism? Dying of mumps. Yeah. That's worse than autism. So even if they did cause autism, still get your kids vaccinated. Because
Also, there was a period of time where autism diagnoses went up a lot because medicine was really learning a lot about autism and how to diagnose it.
yeah, so
What a crazy coincidence.
So the main reason for autism diagnoses going up in the last few decades is not because there's more autism, it's because there are more diagnoses. Because one, which disorders were actually on the autism spectrum were increased, and also more mild forms of autism were recognized as still being autism and started to be diagnosed as such. So before, back in like 92, 93, basically if you were, unless you were like nonverbal and made no eye contact and like, you know, the most severe cases of autism, you weren't going to get the diagnosis. Now we recognize that many people who wouldn't have received the diagnosis before still do have associated symptoms. So yeah, basically we got better at finding it, and we got broader definitions for it. So that's all that happened. It reminds me of a story. I don't know how true the story is. Oh, Mackenzie Brown says, heck anti-vax with a Mothra emoji, so we'll take a drink for that Mothra emoji. And yes, heck anti-vax. So there's a story about a town in Ireland, as the story goes. And again, I don't know if this is... But they had a particular cliff. And they had a problem because they had a reputation for a lot of suicides in this town in Ireland, because people would drive to the cliff and jump off of it. And Goop23 for $2 says, can confirm I'm vaccinated and I'm autistic. Well, there you go. It must have been the vaccine. YouTube, I'm against the idea that vaccines cause autism. Please don't take down my channel. So this town in Ireland is tired of having such a high suicide rate. So they hire a new coroner. And suddenly, the number of deaths being ruled suicide goes down dramatically. The reason is because the coroner decides that unless there's a suicide note, he's going to mark it as an accidental death. So apparently lots of people, according to him, just drive up to the cliff and accidentally fall off. So here's the question. Did the suicide rate at that town go down? Or did they change the definition of what they were counting as suicides, despite what was actually happening in real life? Obviously, it's the second one. Now, this is sort of the opposite direction, where we're reducing the numbers by changing the definition, whereas in autism, we changed the definition and it increased the numbers. But it's the same idea. You're calling things that you used to not call something else, right? We used to not call these things autism. Now we do. So the number of people with it goes up. It's not that hard to understand. So we'll keep going.
I wanted to point out at a Yale University, Liberty, they have criticized this connection between vaccines and autism. So Kent isn't even kind of in the mainstream Yale community with this. He's way out in left field. Just a little data point there.
Yeah, I will say Kent's weird medical woo stuff is not typical of young Earth creationism. It's
and is this part of his seminar on creationism?
This is part of his Creation Science Evangelism 201. This is class 6. So he did a 101 and a 201, which were deep dives into basically whatever it is that Kent Hovind believes.
Okay.
Yep. They're multi-part.
Well, thanks for the free preview. I don't think I'm going to invest in the series. So
he claims that people were given college credit for taking these courses.
Oh,
I don't know if that's true. I just hope not, and I don't want to investigate because I want to live in a world where I can say I don't think it's true. And if I investigate, I might end up in a world where I say no, I know it's true, and I hate that fact. I'm going to live in blissful ignorance about that.
75,000% increase in autism. Nobody in Mississippi was autistic in 92. All of a sudden it jumps up to 461 10 years later.
Yeah, same thing.
I mean, any doctor with half of a brain in his head ought to be looking at these statistics and saying, what is causing this?
What about a doctor with a whole brain?
Yes, if you have a whole brain, you might notice that things like the DSM has changed the definitions and the number of things that fall under autism spectrum. And you might also notice that people have gotten much more rigorous about screening for autism spectrum disorders. And yeah, there you go. Mystery solved. That's all it takes.
What is causing...
It's like, I'm going to comment on Kuptu's agreeing with Sal. Like, I grew up YC. I knew so many YC people. Not one of them was anti-vax. Not the ones that I knew. I don't think it's a YC thing. I mean, it basically started with fake science, and then Jim Carrey went crazy with it for a while, and I don't know if it's really related to... It is crazy, which is why Kent eats it up, but...
Yeah.
Autism. I don't know why they're not putting the connection together that, hey, maybe it has to do with the poisons we're putting in the kid's system.
No, that was suggested, and then it was shown that there was actually absolutely no statistical significance between vaccinations and autism. What was the case was that the age at which you can start to diagnose autism spectrum disorders is close to the age around which you start getting a fair few vaccines. That's it, right? It's the same as saying, hey, did you know that reading ability in children correlates strongly with femur length? Which it does.
What?
Yeah. So there's a couple options here. It could be that tall kids read better.
It could be.
It could be that. Or
anyone with half a brain would know that.
Yeah. Or it could be that as kids get older, they tend to get better at reading, and they also tend to get taller because children grow. So...
I thought children started out as old people and grew into babies like in Benjamin Button.
No, it was just him.
Oh, wait, that was a fictional movie.
Yeah, it was fictional, and even in the movie, it was just Benjamin Button. And actually, he still was born as a small baby-sized old man, and then he grew into, like, an adult-sized man, and then he shrank again. So even then, he would still be growing at the start of his life. So, yeah. It's literally just two things sometimes happen around the same time. It doesn't mean that they're causally linked. Tectonic for 100 Argentinian peso says AIG and antivax are bags of vulvas, equality, cloaca superiority. Well, cloaca is the superior form of excretory organ. So, I mean, yeah, clearly cloaca superiority. But yeah, we'll take a drink. That counts. All right, here we go.
Vaccines.
Dapper, I have to add something. I did hear a Yek biologist saying, it was Andrew Fabich, He pointed out that pregnant mothers who get fevers, their children have an increased risk of autism. That's why it's good to get a vaccine so she doesn't get a fever. And he was saying, take it, because it actually might be a means of preventing autism. So I just
There you
wanted to
go.
throw that data point out.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I would like to look further into that because, I mean, it can make some sense to me. Like, if you raise your body temperature, that's going to raise the temperature of the developing baby's brain, which could cause changes. Because developing babies are very sensitive to various things going on in their mother's body. So yeah, I mean, it seems within the realm of plausibility. And hey,
Yeah.
more
Yeah, I
reasons
just
to get
Googled it.
vaccinated. Yeah, I will be doing that after though.
Oh, by the way, if anything I say is wrong, I hope you'll correct it. I don't take any offense. I don't want bad stuff to go out there, even if it comes out of my mouth.
Don't worry, Sal. If you say something I know to be wrong, I'll call you on it.
I know.
Okay.
Hey,
Could be caught.
I'm running out of drink here. I might have to refill soon.
Oh my
so-
goodness. Well, we are actually coming up on our break in about like 10 to 15 minutes. So,
Causing it. Mary Toko has an article here that says America has the highest death rate of sudden infant
Jeez,
death
he talks
syndrome,
about Mary
SIDS, it's
Toko so
called.
much, you should just marry her already.
yeah.
I remember one of my neighbors when I was a kid growing up, they said, oh, the baby died in the crib. SIDS baby, sudden infant death. I go, what is that? Baby just died. Parents go in the morning, the baby's dead.
Yep. It's a thing that happens. I don't know about the United States rates versus those of other countries. But some things that have been connected to it are some things as simple as like sleep position, like is the baby on its side, on its back, or on its belly, and things like that. But what there isn't a connection to is amount of vaccines. And in fact, if I remember correctly, since this video has been made, incidence of SIDS has been going down in the United States. But I'm not positive on that. Mike Brooks for £5 says, I'm autistic and didn't get the MMR vaccine. I agree with Sal. Kent's medical woo is just stupidity. And yeah, so there's the other thing, is that people who aren't vaccinated don't have lower rates of autism, which you would expect. So, yeah.
There are some studies that seem to indicate that SIDS is actually caused by defects in the brain defects that affect breathing. But it's just one of those things that's really hard to test for because technically they still don't know the cause. I mean, they're getting closer to narrowing it down, but also there could be multiple causes.
Well, yeah, that's another thing. Is it's
But
basically
there's
a
no
baby.
prevention. You can just lower the risk.
Yeah, because the thing is, I mean, baby stops breathing in its sleep and dies. That could be due to more than one thing, right? More than one thing can interrupt your breathing. So, and also, I don't actually know if the United States has a higher rate of SIDS than other countries. So, if anyone wants to check that out, that would be interesting to me because it doesn't seem obviously like something that would be true. But I mean, I don't know. The United States leads in various things, including gross number of COVID-19 cases in the world, although not per capita. Jack of Hearts for £5 says, daily reminder that Andrew Wakefield had his medical license revoked for starting the rumor linking the two, which he did because of money. Yes, Andrew Wakefield did in fact start that rumor, and it was almost entirely because he had an alternative vaccine to the MMR vaccine that was widely being used at the time, and he wanted to market it as the safer alternative. And so he started the lie that vaccines cause autism. And ever since then, many, many people have been sick or died of preventable diseases because he wanted to sell his own version of the MMR vaccine.
In 1970, Australia made vaccines non-mandatory. 50% of the parents opted out of the program, and SIDS dropped by 50% that year.
I'll tell you what, guys. I don't think that we're going to look that up, but I'm just going to say that Mary Toko is not a source that I'm going to trust for this. So right now, if anyone else wants to go Google this real quick and see if there's actually I doubt very much that there's actually that correlation there. But I'm just going to say, yeah,
Even
Mary
if there is
Toko.
correlation, isn't causation.
Well, it would still be interesting if there were that correlation, because then it would mean that it would be something to look more into.
Yeah, it'd be something to look more into,
yeah.
but I don't.
See, this is something that I see a lot with Kent Hovind. He'll just make these assertions. He rarely makes credible references.
Right.
And I've made the joke one time that I don't think he knows how to read peer-reviewed papers.
No, he absolutely doesn't. That's not a joke. That's just true. And here's the thing, right? MaryToko.com isn't the proper citation for this. What you cite is the studies that indicate that there was a 50% drop in SIDS, and then you also cite, whatever law it is. You say, oh, on this day, the Australian Parliament passed this bill making these vaccines non-mandatory, and then according to this study done, a couple years later, incidence of SIDS dropped by 50%. Also, you'll note that even if we take the claim at face value, it doesn't actually say how many people in Australia opted out of vaccines. So we don't actually even know what the decrease in the vaccination rate was. It could have been a very minor change in the vaccination rate, because it could be that most Australians know that getting their kids vaccinated is the right thing to do. So, at every step along this, he hasn't actually made the argument. And so, well, I guess I can't say for certain, because I'm not going to Google it right now. I guess I can't say for certain that this isn't a real thing and it couldn't have been correlated. There's no reason for me to think that these things are actually connected. Even at the weak position of just noticing the correlation, I still can't even say that there's even really a correlation, even if we take all this at face value.
The website isn't loading for me.
Well, I'm not.
I think MaryToko.com might not be functional anymore.
That wouldn't surprise me too much. Also, I'll note that I doubt this was just on the homepage for MaryToko.com. There was probably an article that he should have listed. But whatever.
Well, you have to click links and then something like that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta ask, is this seminar like a free advertisement for MaryToko.com?
This one seems to be. Most of them haven't been, but this one sure does seem to be. And I think that's because she is where he gets a lot of his anti-vax stuff. He gets a lot of his weird, vitamins and supplement stuff from Bill Sardi, who, as far as I can tell, ran an MLM scam with vitamins that Kent Hovind was hawking on his own website. So he was selling MLM supplements like vitamins and whatnot. So I don't know if he still is, because I don't know if Bill Sardi's company even still exists without him there. Plus, it was never one of the bigger MLMs. I mean, it was no Avon or Mary Kay or anything.
Don't you think somebody with a brain would say, maybe there's a connection? Hello?
Yeah, and then we looked into it, and there isn't.
Why are we vaccinating these babies?
Oh, I know. To prevent needless deaths of thousands to millions of humans.
Yes. You know what? I'll take a drink. Because, good question, Kent. And the answer is we'll take a cheer for the countless, probably millions at this point, of people who are currently alive who wouldn't be had they not been vaccinated. Which very likely includes me, and Bent, and Sal.
Wait, what did I do?
You are very likely a person who could be dead had it not been for the vaccines you got.
Gosh, I would have been dead from multiple causes if it weren't for, I'd say, modern medicine, but even 100-year-old medicine might not be modern enough.
Remember that
to
time
have
that
saved me from dying?
Remember that time I almost died of dehydration after having pneumonia for a week?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think without IVs, I wouldn't have made it.
I do remember that.
Sucked down 4 of those big IV bags worth of saline before I had to go to the bathroom.
I remember seeing your dinosaur face and thinking, oh, he might die.
Yeah.
And then for a couple days, that's what the official diagnosis was. It was he might die. And then he didn't. Yes. Way to stay alive, Dapper.
Thank you. Been doing it for 150 million years. I wasn't going to stop right then.
Yeah.
Dr. William Torch of the University of Nevada School of Medicine at Reno said 2/3 of the SIDS babies had been vaccinated with DPT in the preceding 3 weeks.
It's too bad. It should have been more of them.
So this is another one of those things where the age at which you die of SIDS is close to the age at which you receive certain vaccines. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of people get the vaccine and then also die. It's sort of like, hey, what if there was a vaccine that you gave to, say, the elderly specifically, and then you notice that, gee, a fair few people who get this vaccine end up having heart attacks in the following weeks. Well, yeah, the elderly are more at risk for heart attack overall. So, what do you want? And yeah, same thing is true for SIDS. So even if we take this at face value, which again, Mary Toko is not a proper citation, you should cite Dr. William Torch so that people can check up on that, because Mary Toko isn't the source. She's at best a secondary, person who herself might cite sources. But yeah, people get certain childhood diseases around the age that they also get other unrelated vaccines.
Well, if 2/3 of the kids that die in their crib just got a vaccine, I mean, somebody ought to put two.
I want to say a very special thank you to Nathaniel Gray for joining the channel at the tetrapod level. Guys, if you remember, put in some tetrapod emojis to welcome Nathaniel Gray to the channel membership program. So for those of you who don't know, channel memberships, they start at $1.99 a month. You get access to the Discord server that people have to pay to get into. You have to be a supporter to get into it, which is, by the way, where we tend to do the after show for Kent with Bent. It also gets you access to, right now, I believe, 10 early access videos. It's like 2.5 months worth of Dapper Dino early access videos. The newest one was just uploaded today. So do consider it. The same is true for the Patreon. If you join the Patreon, which actually starts at $1, so if that $2 is too much, but you want to do the $1, then you can go for the Patreon. And it gets you access to the same stuff. There are higher tiers with higher rewards, so but then again, if you can't afford it, please don't. But I do appreciate that Mackenzie Brown, Royland Hutchins, and Olivia Williams are sending the tetrapod emojis. Oh, and Science Side Up is sending all the emojis, including our newest, the Petak emoji. Because you always wanted to be able to insult people in chat in Klingon on my channel, didn't you?
2 and 2 together, don't you think? You don't need to be a genius to figure that out. You at least should start looking for maybe a possible smoking gun here, all right?
Why don't you ask
Outside
a bunch
of
of 5-year-olds what they think, Kent, since you trust their
Yeah,
expertise
I mean,
so much?
5-year-olds are apparently experts in biology, right? They can tell you what a kind is. Although I do love the time that he asked a kid whether or not all the squirrels were the same kind of animal, and the kid said no, and then he just ignored his own 5-year-old test because it didn't give him the answer he wanted. Good job,
Are you
Kent.
sure, Cabe?
He's like, why not? They're all squirrels. The kid's like, I don't know, they're not the same kind. It's just like, yes. Also, don't bring your kids to Dinosaur Adventureland. There are child predators there.
Atlanta, Georgia. You
Also,
can
you
go
could drown.
about.
What's that? Sorry.
Oh, also, they could drown.
Yes, they could drown. One child has drowned there.
I'm going to guess 70 or 80 miles, probably more than that. Yeah, 80 or 90 miles, I don't know. East of Atlanta, to the little town of Elberton. Elberton is famous for its granite mines. They mine granite there. Of course, Stone Mountain, Georgia is a huge granite rock. If you've never seen that, you ought to go see it. But you go north on Highway 77, about 7 or 8 miles. The Cherokee Indians call this the center of the earth. That was their holy ground, the center of the earth right there, north of Elberton, Georgia. Well, you drive up that road and there's absolutely nothing out there. I mean, it's just zero.
Nathaniel Gray says, for $5, doth mine eyes deceive me? Am I witnessing a live Kent with Bent? And do tetrapods have access to the kaiju? I can't figure it out. First membership. So what you want to do to get access to the kaiju emojis is there will be on the chat button, and this is assuming you're watching from a browser. From mobile, I think it's similar, but I don't have a mobile version in front of me right now. So, but yeah, there should be a little smiley face. If you click on it, you should be presented first with my channel emojis, and then with YouTube specific emojis, and then the just general use emojis that work on most platforms. But I'm going to go ahead and say that Nathaniel Gray was trying to send a kaiju emoji, so we're going to drink for it, and then we're going to go take our quick break. All right, guys, we are going to be back in a few minutes, and there will be a quick word from our sponsors, which basically means I'm going to once again say, hey, feel free to subscribe to the Patreon or the channel memberships, and then we'll jump right back into this. So, guys, we will be right back after this wonderful musical interlude with a clock. All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope that wasn't too long. I hope you guys aren't too disappointed with that little dip in content there. But we had to refill drinks. We had to take some bio breaks, things like that. It happens. What I want to say, there you go. We're getting some grape. So, just real quick, like I said earlier, if you guys really want to help the channel out and you can afford it, there is a Patreon and a channel membership program. I'm going to be doing the new credits for this month tomorrow. Unfortunately, I didn't get to them today, but that's okay because some new names needed to be added as of today. So hey, that just means more names are going to be on there. It starts at $1 on Patreon, $1.99 on YouTube. You get access to the Discord server, early access, names in the credits, video requests, all at various levels. And hey, that Discord server is where I'm going to be hanging out after this. So, you can...
Me too!
Yeah, you can keep the whole hanging out with Dapper train rolling. Also in an even more immediately interactive way, because I'll be in voice chat. So, alright, here we go. Here's Kent.
Except way off in the distance, about, I don't know, a quarter mile off the highway, you see these rocks.
It's the Georgia Guidestones. He's going to complain about the Georgia Guidestones.
I don't see rocks there.
Yeah.
I see the sky and is that a little silo or something?
No, that's the Georgia Guidestones.
It looks like it's... okay.
Sticking up out of the ground, like Stonehenge. I went over there to see them. Said, what is this? I'd heard about them, read about them quite a bit. Said, I want to see it, okay? What you'll see on these rocks is very interesting. There's a stone on the ground that says it's put up by Arthur C. Christian, a pseudonym. In other words, he gave a false name. According to the story, the local story there, the people at the granite quarry that...
By the way, we have a $4.99 super chat from Work in Progress. I figured out my lack of emojis. My Patreon and YouTube are on different email accounts. Lol. Oh, yeah, that could be. All right, here we go.
Dig out the granite and cut tombstones and stuff out of it and sell it, ship it all over the place. And granite slabs for, countertops and things like that. They said some guy came in, paid cash. Todd had a drawing, said, this is what I want made. Make this for me. And on a certain day, I think it's on the equinox or something, or the solstice or whatever, the sun shines through a little hole in the center rock, and it lights up a little spot on the ground. Typical solar sun worshiper guys, oh, wow, look at this. We know where the sun's going to be. Ha ha, we're smart. We have special knowledge.
Okay, I'm going to have to go ahead and say, making a thing that lets you know when, that solstice or the equinox isn't specifically restricted to, pagan sun worship. It's handy for, just knowing when the seasons start, which is also handy for, just agriculture. Christian Europe was keeping track of the solstices and equinoxes very carefully for their entire history, using things like solar observatories, not because they were worshiping the sun, but because they didn't want to die of starvation, right? That's the only motive you need, is I would rather not have a famine. So I'm just going to take a drink for Kent thinking that basically everything is paganism. Also, as far as I know, Kent does not believe in ancient aliens, because I don't think Kent believes in aliens.
I don't think he does, but I guess I could ask him next time I talk to him, which is never...
855 Big Dino,
right? Extension 2 or 3 or 4. Something, I don't know.
I think last time I called it, it did give you a list of extensions, for the front desk, dial 1, for whatever. So I think if you call it, it'll just tell you which extension it says.
There are a number of people, myself included, who believe this is part of the Masonic Lodge that paid for this.
Why?
Because he couldn't think of the word Illuminati, I guess. I don't know.
Okay, so first I'm taking a drink because we are talking about the Georgia Guidestones. But here's the thing about the Georgia Guidestones. One, they do talk about population control, presumably through things like encouraging people not to have babies, as a means of keeping the planet's ecosystem healthy. Okay, and it also does talk about a sort of one world government kind of thing. But the thing is, that's not what the Masons are really about. At this point, the Masons are basically just a social club for men, where they do some charity work, they go and drink, and they hang out, and they leave. And yeah, there are some religious overtones and rituals, but I know a few Masons, and I've never met one who took any of that overly seriously. And sure, there are Christian churches that disallow their members from being members of the Masonic Lodge because of the beliefs that are, let's say, propounded by the rituals, but again, not generally very much believed. But yeah, the Masons you can just go find ex and current members of the Masons who will tell you what they're about, and it's basically a social club. They collect money for charity. They go hang out. They have they have dinners and drinking parties, and that's basically it. Also,
Not evil charity.
Also, the Georgia Guidestone doesn't have any Masonic symbols. Like it doesn't have like the compass and square anywhere. It doesn't have like the all-seeing eye. Like the only reason to think that it has anything to do with Masons is if you think that the Masons are part of a worldwide, New World Order conspiracy, which there's no reason to think they are.
Okay, now most of the Masons have no idea what they're in. They think they're in a do-gooders club.
Oh, there you go. That explains it. They just don't know. I'm just taking a drink for it. See, the Masons are so good at this that even the Masons don't know about the Masons. Okay, Kent. Sure.
And they don't realize they're in a satanic organization until it's too late.
Or maybe it's that even if you go with the somewhat unorthodox, and I'm putting that a bit mildly, interpretations of the actual religious stuff that the Masons do, really not satanic in any identifiable way, but whatever.
We had a guy in our church, brother, that came up to me a year ago. I said, Brother Hovind, I'm a Mason. I heard you mention in your seminar the Masons are bad. He said, I've been a Mason for 20 years and I got, 32nd degree, whatever it was. He said, why do you say Masons are bad? I've never seen anything bad with the Masons. I said, I'm sure you haven't. I said, would you read a book? He said, yeah. So I gave him the book Beyond the Light, which is available on Chick Publications. Chick
Tracts. Oh my goodness. Remember, guys, Chick Tracts is the organization that had a tract saying that the Pope invented Islam to get rid of Christianity. Because that's a sentence that makes sense. I'm just drinking.
I feel like it didn't work.
Well, it's true that there is a Chick Tract that says that. It's not true that that's the case, though.
I did not know that. Okay, so I have to admit I kind of have a heart for the Chick Tracts. So that kind of you burst my bubble here.
Yeah, don't trust the Chick Tracts. Yeah.
I mean, I grew up on them too.
I mean, there was also the Chick Tract that fortunately is no longer in publication, and apparently it's been pulled from any future printings. That basically said that, that dad who a word that I'm not going to say because it would get me possibly community guidelines struck, that did something extremely inappropriate with the daughter in the story. It's okay because at the end he becomes a Christian, and so now they're a happy family. Yeah, no. Converting to a religion doesn't make your criminal activities with your children go away or become okay or make this now a functional family. So yeah, those are some things that the Chick Tracts have put out there. And also, I'll point out that Kent Hovind likes to use as a source the Chick Tract Big Daddy, which he himself consulted on, which puts forth his view of creationism. Yeah.
With the Hovind theory and all?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not called the Hovind theory, but it has all the major highlights of the Hovind theory.
Like the comet and all that?
Yep. Dark Law Dragon for $5 US put in 4 kaiju emojis, so we got Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. AIG is a bag of spaghetti and meatballs with a Ghidorah. You know what? I'm going to drink 5 times because that was 5 emojis, and AIG is a bag of dicks. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Ooh. Should have stirred that gin a little better. Okay.
Did you add something to your gin? That'll ruin it.
I added some lime juice and some tonic. Okay. Yeah, okay, we'll just keep going.
It's Masonry Beyond the Light. I gave it to him. Very easy to read. I said, just read this.
I will say, you know what, Ken? I'm going to take a drink for you being right. Chick Tracts are very easy to read. They're very short.
True.
They don't have very many words. It's extremely easy to read a Chick Tract. That's fair. And by the way, this is me getting more generous with saying things that are true, because it hasn't happened a whole lot, and I like to make sure it gets in at least once per stream. So
I'm reading a digital version of this chick tract, and this is amazing.
should we read it sometime on the channel?
That could be a good show idea.
Tell you what, guys, put in the comments.
If gluons aren't the answer, what is?
Guys,
yes, because the strong nuclear force doesn't exist.
Guys, put in the comments if you would like to see us read some of the more. We're gonna stick with. So, you know what? There's a whole bunch. Like we could read the Dungeons and Dragons chick tract, the one about Islam, the one about Masons. Like if you want to see that, put it in the comments. And if we get enough comments encouraging me to do a chick tract reading on one of these Saturdays here, I will just bring up as many of the chick tracts that I think are going to be amusing, and we'll go through them. So let me know.
A couple weeks later, he came to me at the church over at Marcus Point Baptist Church. Handed my book back and said, I have quit the Masons, and I'm encouraging everybody I know to quit the Masons. Thank you for letting me read that book.
I'm going to have to say that, by the way, chick tracts tend not to have citations beyond Bible verses. So I don't know why this guy would take the chick tract overly seriously, but whatever. I also am not sure this is a story that happened, because as we all know, Kent makes up stories and then pretends that they're real.
So I'm not saying all Masons are bad, okay, but there is an evil organization inside that secret club. And you won't know about it till you get to the top, and then it's too late.
I thought Satan was at the top of it.
It's true. How can you get to the top if Satan's already there? Oh, give us a poll, Dapper, says Cheshire Vic. All right, Chesh. Fine. Here we go. Poll, here we go. Should I read chick tracts on the air? Yes, no, and then we'll add a third one that says yes, but do it in Klingon. There we go. Now there's going to be a poll, because somebody bullied me into it. All right, here we go.
But here, Arthur C. Christian, which many people think is was amazing.
What's up? Sorry.
I said I'm okay with that kind of bullying.
Fair enough.
Mason. They have, right behind my shoulder, I don't know if you can see it in the picture there, you see the hole in the rock. It's a slot cut through this granite slab that the sun shines through and lights up some spot on the ground, you know, to be some solar solstice sun worshippers. But here they have what they have on these stones in 12 languages.
Really?
They have carved.
Really? That what?
I don't know what you're saying. Like, what are you asking what to?
What Kent just said. They're worshiping the sun through this?
No, probably not. But like we said, like he seems to associate any kind of astronomical observations.
Any kind of gap in a structure that lets sunshine through must mean you're worshiping the sun?
No, only if it does it on just the solstices or equinox.
I guess you'd be worshiping the equinox or the solstice, not the sun. Nothing about that makes any kind of sense at all.
All right, here we go.
I feel like that's too stupid for me. I have to drink to that.
Commandments for the
I
New
don't
World
work
Order.
that often, but yikes.
Commandment number 1. Maintain humanity under 500 million, that's a $500 million, in perpetual balance with nature. You can go to radioliberty.com or cuttingedge.com.
I like that he says these stones are full of Masonic symbolism, or symbols, sorry, but none are displayed for us. It's just plain text. And yeah, this is on the Georgia Guidestone. I'll take a drink, because Kent is accurately reporting the first quote-unquote commandment on the Georgia Guidestone. And yeah, I am noticing that yes is far and away winning, and in second place is yes, but do it in Klingon. So what I might do is I might translate one of them into Klingon just for funsies.
People accidentally voted no.
Yeah, someone did accidentally vote no. That is odd.
That's all right.
We forgive you.
Mountains of stuff about these Georgia Guidestones. Or just go to the internet, type in Georgia Guidestones. You'll see all kinds of stuff on there. They were put up about 1980, if I recall. 25 years ago, they put these stones up and say, one of our first goals is to have 500 million people on the planet. Now, wait. Who was awake an hour ago and remembers how many people are on the planet right now? 6 billion. Their goal is to maintain humanity at 500 million. It looks to me like somebody's going to have to die to make that goal.
A lot of people.
Like a whole bunch of somebodies. Right?
Yeah.
Well, in order to achieve it in a short time frame, yes. In a long time frame, all you need to do is just keep the birth rate under the replacement rate for long enough, and the population will decline to that without anyone needing to be killed specifically for this goal. So, I mean, strictly no one has to be killed to meet this goal as long as your target time is long enough in the future. So, I would say that anyone who wants to do this...
They don't have to be killed, but enough people would have to die.
Well, yeah,
They would just die of natural causes.
those people were going to die anyway.
And their natural time. Exactly.
Yeah,
But they
so-
still would have to die.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, actually,
But
to
I
do
feel
it
like
that
they're
way...
doing a really bad job of number one, because I don't think they've been maintaining humanity under 500 million at all.
No, in fact,
So
the human population is still going up. So
it's almost like they're not really doing that.
yeah, so they've had what, 40 years now? Doing a really, really bad job of number one in the last 40 years.
I mean, the Wikipedia does claim that is an inscription, though. So at least there is that.
Yeah.
At least Kent told the truth about what the inscription says.
Goop23 says for $2, everyone dies, Kent. It's true. And I just realized that this is like the second Tuesday stream in a row where we've been like, not to cause an existential crisis, guys.
Right.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like, Kent will always call evolution the religion of death. It's like he forgets the Bible says it's appointed unto man once to die. Like,
Yeah, there is a whole lot of death in the Bible.
death is a part of reality, and Kent knows that, and I don't know why he tries to pretend that a different religion or whatever is going to affect that. Like, I don't know. He's crazy.
All right, here we go.
I mean, as far out as it sounds to Christians who don't even think in these terms generally, there are people who would like to wipe out 95% of this planet. They want to kill you. Just because...
Hold on. At 6 billion, 500 million is 1/12. That's not 5%.
Whoa, numbers.
5%
don't
is
worry about
1/20.
that. Numbers are just lines on paper auditorily when you say them out loud. So,
Okay. Yeah, I guess math isn't very important to Kent, the guy who was a high school science and math teacher. We're gonna take a drink
well, only for 15 years.
We're just gonna take a drink for Kent not knowing the difference between 80% and 95%. Okay.
because you're breathing air and taking up space. Hitler wanted to kill the Jews.
Oh my goodness. First, we're gonna take a quick drink for mentioning the leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, because of course. But then we're also going to take a drink for how stupid it is that Kent thinks that people who are concerned with human overpopulation are concerned about the physical space that the humans are taking up. That is the least important part of the idea of human overpopulation. No one is talking about how we won't have a place to physically stand. Take a drink. Because once again, I've said it before, this isn't the Star Trek episode Errand of Mercy. You don't know what that episode is? Go watch it. I think it's on like Amazon and Paramount Plus. So,
Ew.
well, look, I'm not going to take a stand on what streaming services you should subscribe to. I don't have a subscription to Paramount Plus, but you might, and if you do, the original Star Trek is a great thing to watch on it.
That is a very good point, actually.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Look, if I got Paramount Plus, it would almost be entirely to watch, like, TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise. Anyway, here we go.
Jews just because they were taking up what he called, I forget the German word for it, but it amounts to living space.
Yeah. Okay. But even with that, I'm going to take a drink because it just keeps getting worse.
Excuse me.
Okay, yes. The leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party did in fact say that he needed more breathing room or living space. I mean, you don't have to be overly literal with the translation, it's fine. However, he wasn't talking about Germany being physically so full of people that they couldn't stand anywhere. His justification, which by the way, was false, but you can at least not lie about the reason he gave for expanding German territory. It was to gain things like farmland, mines, forests, the things that produce the resources that people need to live. Because no one could go to Germany and conclude that the entire place was packed wall to wall with humans. It just wasn't, and it was obvious, and no one thought that it was, and no one was arguing that it was. And yes, Tesla Ranger points out that it's Lebensraum in German, which I'm pretty sure I butchered, but whatever. So, that's the thing. It wasn't because of overcrowding in the sense that people couldn't stand. There was plenty of room to exist physically in Germany. The claim, which by the way, again, wasn't actually true, was that Germany didn't have enough land to support its population well. Now, that might actually be true if Germany planned to just never again trade internationally, which kind of was a goal, was, having a completely independent Germany who never needed any other country for anything. It's a stupid goal, because why would you want that? That's getting cheap goods from outside your country is an overall boon to your population. Trying to become self-sufficient is an easy way to lower the living standard of your entire population, elites included. But anyway, yeah. So the thing is, Kent could still make his point about overpopulation and Germany and connecting the ideologies, because there is a similarity in that, the reason that these invasions, one of the excuses for these invasions was we needed the resources, because Germany is overcrowded in the sense that it doesn't have enough room to make the resources it needs. And that's an argument that you could generalize to the Earth, because Earth isn't getting imports from off-world, right? So the Earth does actually have to be self-sufficient if you take that as the unit for society. So there is actually a connection that you could make between that and what was happening in Germany. But instead of actually making the connection, Kent just pretends that it's all about standing room, which it's not. And I don't know why he has to go the dumbest route, because he could actually make valid comparisons, but he doesn't. And that's one of the things that bugs me about Kent, is like sometimes it's trivially easy to come up with a much better argument than the one he's going for to make the same point, but he consistently takes the stupidest option. And I don't get why. It's like when he says that, oh, hey, the circumstances of your birth don't matter to God. You can serve God no matter what. And then he says, because Timothy wrote 2 books of the Bible, even though, no, he didn't. Those are both letters from Paul to Timothy. So,
Timothy was Paul confirmed.
So you can say that Timothy was a great leader in the early church because Paul said so. Great. There you go. You don't have to be wrong about who wrote parts of the Bible to make this point, and you can still make it. I just don't understand why Ken has to go with the stupidest take on so many things. All right, here I'm just taking another drink from that rant because I kind of have to.
He said we need to have more living space for the blonde-haired, blue-eyed German, the superior race. We have much more on this New World Order stuff. We cover some of that stuff in our CSE 101. I don't want to make sure I don't leave anything out, since this is our CSE 201. I want to cover all, kick every rabbit, kick every dog, chase every rabbit.
Hey, we'll take a drink for Kent's casual references to animal abuse, because, I mean, he admitted to abusing his kids. You want to bet that he doesn't kick dogs? I'm pretty sure he does.
We can't. As we go around here. 402, okay. I don't know what the future holds. I know who holds the future, okay? And God's got it under control.
Oh, hey, that was a drink. That was a drink for a joke that doesn't land, which is one of the ones we didn't mention, but it is one of the ones we have is jokes that don't land.
But regardless of what happens to the population, the fact is the current population of 6 billion people is a clear indicator man has not been here for more than a few thousand years.
Oh, goodness.
Even with wars and famines and everything you can imagine thrown at the human population, 6 billion years is plenty to put all the people on the planet.
Got a premise, you've got a conclusion, but where are the other premises and where's the logical flow there?
So, here's the thing. It is true that 6,000 years probably is enough time to get the current world population, right? Like, I'm not going to necessarily dispute this, but the thing is that populations don't just increase over time. They can in certain circumstances. but it's not guaranteed. So, and this, of course, is something we've talked about plenty of times. There's this thing called carrying capacity. And so we'll compare it to some organism other than humans to try to take like the emotional center of this idea out of it, and we can look at it a bit more objectively, right? So let's say you have, we'll say Australia, right? We're going to go with koalas. Now, koalas eat basically exclusively eucalyptus leaves. They cannot really subsist on anything else. And they're also one of the only animals that eats eucalyptus leaves. So the eucalyptus trees and the koalas are very tightly tied together. So you cannot have more koalas than there are eucalyptus trees to support the koalas. So a eucalyptus tree of any given size can only support so many koalas, and there are only a finite number of eucalyptus trees in existence in Australia. I think we all agree with these things. There probably isn't an infinite number of eucalyptus trees. I guess I've never been to Australia. Maybe y'all have an infinite pit of eucalyptus. I don't know. I doubt it. So there can only physically exist on Earth in the wild so many koalas before they start to starve, bringing their numbers back down. That amount that the whole of Australia could support is the carrying capacity of the environment for koalas. Okay. Which means that if the koala population is around that number, it can only fluctuate around that number at a maximum. It can't simply increase exponentially past that number because there isn't enough food. Okay. But what that means is if you have a long period of ecological stability, your population of koalas is going to be relatively constant. Okay. Humans are subject to the same constraints. Now, in recent historical times, humans have been getting better at producing food. But that was not always the case. So before the agricultural revolution, humans weren't producing food. They were going out and finding food. And they could only eat as much as they could find in the environment around them, whether by gathering or hunting or storing caches sometimes. Okay, so that's a constraint. Then we have the agricultural revolution. Suddenly, humans can start to reliably produce food surpluses, which allows their population to grow. So we get a spurt in the human growth, human population growth. Okay. But for a long time, new technologies in agriculture were very, very slow. For instance, you could go, say, to a Roman latifundia in 500 BC, and then go to 1500 years later, the same region, and people would be farming with basically the same technology. They'd be using ox-driven plows, they'd be planting by hand, they'd be irrigating either by hand or sometimes with water wheels, and you would have essentially the same farming technology, which is why for most of the historical period, population growth was driven more by people colonizing previously uninhabited areas, like Madagascar or something, than it was by simply people having more kids where they already were. Now, there was some of them, because there were, in fact, improvements in agriculture, which is slow. But then you get to things like the Industrial Revolution, where we have things like, internal combustion engines, and we have, research into better ways to fertilize land. We have mechanical tractors and things like this, right? Suddenly, the land can be much, much more productive, and population booms again. And since we've been having a ridiculously rapid increase in technology over the past, couple hundred years, that has allowed the human population to grow exponentially over that time. But you can't extend that trend back indefinitely. For one thing, we know just based on archaeology that isn't the case. We know that populations in much of the world were pretty stable for millennia because we don't see significant increases in the amount of human remains or the size of middens or the size of cities and things like that. So while it is true that you probably could fill the world in 6,000 years, the fact that the population is currently consistent with your ability to fit some curve to 6,000 years doesn't mean that that's how old the Earth is. It's sort of like saying, well, it would only take Sal about a year and a half or so to grow his hair to that length, so he must only be a year and a half old. Well, maybe, but probably not. Probably not.
Well, I wanted to say, you pointed out something interesting Kent seems to have a pathological problem of taking the stupidest argument when he could actually have made a better one. And so the population numbers could be used to argue for some sort of very small population at one time in the recent past. And you'll actually see that when you go to Wikipedia. He botched the argument. And what you'd have to figure into this is, again, how would it have grown at the existing carrying capacity? But I'm not going to go into all the details. But the point is, because I've listened to the Young Earth arguments that are actually better framed than this one, it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. He'll just manage to make a terrible argument about something that actually had maybe some promise.
Yeah, Kent consistently takes the stupidest version of every argument, as far as I can tell. I've actually heard him argue in favor of the globe Earth against the flat Earth. He can't even do that well. It's kind of amazing. All right, here we go.
There was a Discovery Channel special a couple years ago. They said, based on DNA studies, scientists are now putting forth the theory that there was a catastrophe 70,000 years ago that reduced the human population to a few thousand, creating a genetic bottleneck. They propose that a volcano caused this near extinction of mankind.
Okay, so this is the Toba super eruption or supervolcano hypothesis. It's now largely out of favor. It probably isn't a thing. Sorry. The quote-unquote bottleneck isn't a few thousand, it's a few tens of thousands. So assuming that... Isn't it Discovery Channel? There's not Discover Channel, is there? But there's a Discovery Channel. Maybe Kent... I think Kent means Discovery Channel. So Discovery Channel seems to have gotten this off by about an order of magnitude. Right now, the thinking is more that there was probably a persistent bottleneck for a few thousand years of about a few tens of thousands of people. And that rather than being the result of the Toba supervolcano, this was probably simply a result of Homo sapiens being, at the time, relatively restricted to one smallish area of Eastern Africa. Basically being in like the Rift Valley in Eastern Africa for a while. And then only after they spread out was their population able to boom, because again, the carrying capacity of the Rift Valley is only so big. But if you start spreading into other areas, then you start getting into areas that also have their own independent carrying capacity. So the total number of humans on Earth can increase. So I will say, though, that in 2002, the Toba supervolcano was still a viable, reasonably well... drink for Godzilla. It was still very much on the table, is basically what I'm trying to get at. Much more so than today. So I can't criticize him too much for taking the Toba idea more seriously than it currently deserves. The Venerable Bead is talking about cheetahs. Guys, if you want to see me rant about people getting cheetahs wrong and comparing them to humans, go check out the Busting Dismantled series that Gutsa Gibbon, Dr. Dan, and I did. You can hear me rant a whole bunch about people misrepresenting the current problems with cheetah genetics.
You know, I think they're onto something here. Based on DNA studies, there was a genetic bottleneck.
Of a few tens of thousands, right?
Can anybody think where there might have been a genetic bottleneck? Noah's
I guess
flood.
he's going to say the flood.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna take a drink, and then we're gonna explain the differences between the proposed human bottleneck from science and Kent Hovind's idea about the flood. Go. Okay, so the bottleneck proposed by anthropologists is of a few tens of thousands for a few thousand years, maybe. Now, a few tens of thousands is actually enough to maintain a reasonably healthy gene pool. Many species persist at levels around that size for a very long time without any particular problems with their genetics. Now, the flood bottleneck, you might think it's 8, right? Because we got Noah, his wife, 3 sons, and their wives. You add all that up, it's 8, right? Here's the problem, though. All 3 of those sons could only get genetic material from Noah and his wife. So you don't get to count them as three separate, completely unrelated individuals, nor do you get to count Noah and his wife as additional separate individuals, because every indication is that they did not continue to reproduce after the flood. So really what you have is three relatively unrelated females at ideal conditions for the wives, and then Noah and his wife making a total of 5. Species don't tend to come back from a bottleneck of 5, and the reason is because of a phenomenon known as the extinction vortex, or the extinction spiral. The idea goes like this. At very small population sizes, effective population size is what we're talking about here, which is a measure of how much genetic diversity there actually is. At very small effective population sizes, the prevalence of deleterious mutations that cannot be weeded out without further reducing the population starts to become a problem, because you don't actually have enough population for the cost of selection to be born very easily. And so what the things that happens is either the mutations are selected against, further reducing the population to unacceptably low levels, or they're not weeded out, and you overall lower the fitness of the entire population. And the thing is, it's very hard to escape an extinction vortex. That's why it's like, the image it's supposed to conjure up is like a whirlpool, right? Where try as you might to get out of the whirlpool, your ship just keeps getting dragged into it, like Charybdis in the Odyssey. So this is the situation that a 5-person bottleneck would likely put humanity in, because you only have at maximum the 5 alleles for any given gene, and many of the mutations will end up being deleterious, and you don't have a large enough population that you can safely bear the cost of selection. So there you go. Extinction vortex is a likely result of this. And here's the thing. If you want to propose that all of humanity comes from Noah and his family, you have a lot of work to do. One, you have to overcome the potential of an extinction vortex. That's a big problem.
Hey, Dapper. Can I toast you, sir?
Absolutely.
I did. I learned a new term.
Oh,
I published
all right.
in Population Genetics and Secular Venues. So, sir, I salute you.
Thank you. I do try to educate. All right, so the other big problem is that we can actually measure the maximum amount of genetic diversity that could occur in 5 individuals, which is the maximum number we get from the flood. And then we can look at current diversity and look at what it would take to get from here, where we are, to there. And one of the things you have to remember is that most young Earth creationist models assume that there's basically none of the non-harmful variation in human genetics is a result of mutation. Usually what they say is it's a result of the initial genetic diversity that God sort of preloaded into humanity. The problem is that you can calculate about how much chromosome, what am I trying to say? Crossover, there's the word. Chromosomal crossover would be required for this, because in order to get the current number of different alleles and just variability in the various loci in the human genome, you have to get not only many, many crossover events, but you have to get intragenic crossover events, which is a problem because intragenic locations are a relative cold spot for chromosomal crossover. Intergenic regions are the hot spots. So you very rarely get a crossover between chromosomes inside of a gene. So a chromosome crossover happens during meiosis. This is when you're making your gametes. During this process, sometimes your chromosomes will line up and they will swap sections. Usually one section from one ends up on the other one. That same section from the other one ends up on the first one. And that's how you mix up the genetics of each chromosome so that the genes on a certain chromosome don't have to stay linked. Well, the thing is that most chromosomes have an average of 1 crossover event per meiosis. And you only get 1 meiosis per pair of chromosomes per generation for you, right? So each of your chromosomes that you have, on average, are the result of 1 crossover event from the parent you inherited the crossover that chromosome from. Well, in order to get the current genetic diversity from 5 people on the ark, even if we assume maximum heterozygosity, you need more like 300 crossovers per generation. And you need most of them to be intragenic, not intergenic. The
It
timeline,
sounds like you would just not reproduce at that point.
yeah, the timeline doesn't work with observed crossover rates and observed genetic diversity. So you're going to have to introduce something else to the model.
Like
Kent,
miracles.
however, is the kind of guy who thinks that your chromosomes, when reproduction happens, your chromosomes unwind into just one long DNA strand. Then the DNA strand splits along the base pairs. Then one set of base pairs from the mom goes and hangs out with the other opposite set of base pairs from the dad, and then the opposite base pairs from the dad with the same base pairs from the mom go link up, and they form two new hybrid chromosomes, which that's not how anything works.
And doesn't he think the base pairs are the genes?
Yes.
Like that's the same thing?
Yeah, he thinks that each base pair is a gene. So he thinks that the human genome has about 6.4 billion genes. It does not. Not even close. He's off.
I hope you have a video of that, Dapper.
Oh,
I'd
I
like
do.
to share it.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I actually have two videos with it. One is Kent with Bent, where we went over it, but I have a much shorter one where I clipped that out, and another YouTuber filled in for me with the audio because I was very sick, but I wanted to get the video out. So So I asked him to do the audio, and he graciously obliged. So I will send you that one because it's quicker. All right, here we go.
Thank you.
That was, it's not 70,000. It's only 4,400 years ago. Yeah, there was a genetic bottleneck. You got one family, all starting over again. Okay. Interesting trivia there. Galaxies in space are spinning, but the stars.
That's true. We'll take a drink. That's true. Galaxies in space are spinning.
Great job, Kent. You nailed it. In fact, the fact that he called it a galaxy and not just stars, because he seems to sometimes get confused between the two. Also,
it's true. Kent is
he gets
inconsistent
about astronomy.
about whether he means galaxies or stars.
Stars in the middle go faster than the stars at the outside.
Also true. Take a drink.
Now, it's also very interesting. The spiral arms of the galaxies follows the Fibonacci sequence.
No, that's not true.
Yeah.
Look, not every spiral is a Fibonacci spiral, guys, and galactic spiral arms tend not to be.
This would be a rabbit you'll have to chase yourself, okay? But this is a phenomenal study. Just write down golden mean ratio. Has anybody ever studied anything about the golden mean ratio?
Yes, I have. I've used it in my art. In fact, actually not that long ago for the Speculative Evolution project, I use a phyllotaxis spiral which uses the golden mean and multiples of it in order to distribute branches on a fictional plant so that they cover the maximum surface area, because that's what phyllotaxis spirals do. So, yeah, I've looked into it, Kent. It's great for space filling, but it doesn't come up as much as you think. In fact, a lot of the pictures that people say are golden spirals aren't. Like, most, nautilus shells aren't actually golden spirals. So
It'll absolutely blow your mind. There's a video clip, which my son's going to get to me whenever he gets caught up on everything, put out by Walt Disney years and years ago, called Math Magic Land.
I love that. Math Magic and all that, with Daffy Duck being learning about mathematics and being a math magician is great fun. I recommend it to everyone. Go watch it. So cheers, Kent, for getting a good film recommendation. And the great thing is, unlike a lot of the Disney documentaries about science, which are now hopelessly out of date, because none of the math has changed, because math tends not to go back on previous proofs. It still works. So,
where they have a whole bunch of stuff about the golden mean ratio.
Yeah, there's a bit in there.
Just go to the internet and type in golden mean ratio, or type in Fibonacci.
Golden ratio.
Too much sci-fi, says Donald Duck. What did I say? Did I say Daffy Duck? Did I mix up my ducks? I might have said Daffy. Sorry about that, guys. I blame the gin. Oh, and I'm going to try and pronounce this. Quicksumurfs. Let me know if I got that right. For 50 sex, thank you very much. I always appreciate when I get sex. Said, the story so far. In 1994, a bag of redacted was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move. We're going to take a drink for an AIG or a bunch of dicks joke, as well as a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy joke. Great stuff. It's been far too long since I've read that series. I need to go reread all 5 books in the trilogy.
Fibonacci was the Italian scientist in 1100 something and 900 years ago. Fibonacci is spelled F-I-B-I-Nacci, something, I don't know.
Is this really happening?
Yes, it is.
Oh my goodness, that was great. FIB. No, that's what you do all the time. Also, there's an O in there. Also, it doesn't matter if he
No,
spells it
not
wrong, but
really.
it is
But
funny.
it's just.
I don't know. It's Italian. Okay.
That's, you know what? We'll take a drink. It is Italian.
Is it?
Pretty sure. If it's not, I will undrink.
But Fibonacci, he discovered the ratio of the numbers of a sequence. You go 0, 1.
No, you go 0, 0. And
You go 1, 1, 2, 3. I don't think you start with 0, but you might actually.
well, no, because if you do 1, oh yeah, you do 0, 1, then 1, then 2, and then 3, then 5.
What's the sum
Yeah, it
of
does
0
start
and
with
1?
0. Although some
1.
authors admit the initial 0.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter if you do it or not.
What's the sum of 1 and 1? 2. What's the sum of 1 and 2? 3. 2 and 3 makes 5. 3 and 5 makes 8. So every number becomes the sum of the two previous numbers. So you go 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. You keep adding these numbers up. Well, you can go forever, of course, and do that. But
Yeah, Eric Hamian is right. Sequence starting with 0, 0 wouldn't go anywhere. I was wrong about that. It does usually start with a 0.
you'll find something interesting as you do this. The larger number divided by the smaller number, after the first two or three don't work. But after that, it becomes the larger number divided by the smaller number is 1.618.
Okay, we're going to take a quick drink because, well, I'll explain why. So Kent is basically right. The ratio of adjacent results from the Fibonacci sequence approach the golden ratio as the sequence approaches infinity. So presumably, if you could complete the infinite series, you would end up with a ratio that is exactly phi. Of course, it's not really a finite or an infinite series that you can complete, and also the ratio between any two products can't be exactly phi because phi is an irrational number, so it's a little complicated. But yes, it is basically the case. The Fibonacci sequence, you can use the ratios of the results of that to approach phi, which also means that if you start with Fibonacci sequence in terms of things like size or something, you can then create things related to the golden ratio and the golden spiral and things like that. So yeah.
Hey, Dapper.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask. I was just furiously Googling this thing about Fibonacci and galaxies. I did find a random hit: Andromeda, the galaxy M81, and the Milky Way galaxy were listed. So you're not saying that there could be some that have that.
Oh, they're absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
the
what
thing is
Kent got wrong was
that they just
he's
all do.
suggesting- Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's no rule about galaxies that they all have Fibonacci spirals.
Fibonacci
So
is
that's
found
what
in
he
everything.
made a mistake, right? There.
Yeah, so it's not that spiral galaxies, which by the way, many galaxies aren't spiral galaxies at all, but they don't all just have Fibonacci spirals.
Okay, so maybe I'll just make a weak prediction. He's going to say that God did it. This is the hand of God.
Probably.
And so this is going to be a wrong inference on his part. But I actually did learn something. I didn't. I actually learned something from Kent today, and he got it half right.
Yeah.
So-
He said it weird, but
Can
yeah.
I get half a sip for that? I was
sure, yeah,
actually
we'll
impressed.
fix it, yeah. Brian Stevens points out that 13 divided by 8 is 1.625, not 1.618. So the thing with that and the golden ratio is that as you continue to go up in the Fibonacci sequence, the ratio gets closer and closer to phi. So the earlier you are in the sequence, the more variation there is going to be between the actual number that you get and the actual value for phi. So it's a little... You can't just take any one's or any pair of numbers and then just assume that you're going to get exactly phi out of them. You won't, because you can't, because phi can't be written as a fraction. Whereas every ratio of these whole numbers is by definition a fraction. So yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than just taking any two numbers and dividing them from the the Fibonacci sequence and then getting phi. You won't get phi if you do that, but you'll get closer and closer as you go. All right, here we go.
Always 1.618.
Yeah, no, Kent, it's not always 1.618. it gets closer to 1.618 as you go.
Oh yeah, he phrases it poorly, and in doing so, says things incorrect about it, and that's all that is. Like, I mean, he is right; it does approach 1.618, but he's wrong in how he phrases it.
I'm a little surprised that he actually hasn't gone for the whole like the spiral arms in the galaxy should have like been spun into oblivion yet. So I think he's going to go for that because I think he's going to say if galaxies are billions of years old, then the spirals couldn't persist because the inner stars rotate faster and they go slower and slower as you get towards the edge of the disk. Which all that's true. They do go slower and slower as you get to the edge of the disk. Of course, if we do get there, I'll explain why that isn't a problem for spiral arms because they aren't what Kent thinks they are.
Very interesting that the distance between your eyes and the distance from this line to your chin is a ratio of 1 to 1.618.
I'm actually
there's a lot of Fibonacci sequence found in nature. It could be.
There's also a lot of people who just pretend that things that are the Fibonacci sequence when they're not, but sure, whatever. You know what? I'll just accept that maybe that's actually the case. I just don't see the significance of it.
You ever see somebody say, he just looks funny, his eyes are too close together. It just doesn't look right, you know?
That's rude.
So here's a fun little rule of thumb from looking at anatomy for art. Eyes are usually about one eye width apart from each other. So when in doubt, thumb out Godzilla, Mothra, and Ghidorah from Dark Law Dragon. We're only going to drink once for that one, though.
That's what you're going to
Because there's a god. Well, you guys can do whatever you want. Because there's a
this
Godzilla,
is water. I don't
Mothra,
care.
and a Ghidorah. All right, here we go. Come on, wait. Why is this not working?
You have to. I don't know.
Is it broken? Did I break it? There it is.
The human mind seems to work in this called the golden mean ratio. Some things just look pleasing to the eye. Certain sounds sound good to the human ear.
Wait. The mind works in the golden ratio?
Yeah, I don't know.
My mind works at a 1.618-ish to 1 ratio?
Apparently.
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
Because words don't matter, so just use whichever ones you want. No one's ever going to watch this in 2022 and talk about it on YouTube. To 89 people, about which 20 haven't clicked like yet.
Yeah, come on, guys, click like. Oh, now spacebar isn't. There we go. Is it? I mean, I don't know enough about pianos. Maybe. Oh. I don't. Oh, apparently we didn't have sound. So Sal, you're gonna have to say that again. I don't know. Oh, it's because I tried to hit spacebar on the video, but I had OBS active. Sorry about that, Sal. That's a my fault thing. So could you start back over with that?
That is worth checking. I've never heard about the Fibonacci ratio. So when he's talking about when he says 1.358, the ratio between like 1 and 8 it's a double in terms of the frequency. And the one between 1 and 5 and 1 and 3, I don't know that. So at least one of them doesn't have a Fibonacci ratio there, as far as I could tell. So I'd have to look at. I've never heard that.
Okay.
I've studied the numbers in music for a long time.
Yeah.
He may or may not be right. It's worth looking.
All right. Well, guys, I think we're actually going to start wrapping it up here because we're really close to the 2-hour mark. And I mean, this has been pretty dumb. It started with medical woo. Now we're getting into math facts that probably aren't facts.
We did get a little Godwin's Law in there for 1 or 2 sentences.
It's true.
That's how Godwin's Law works. It's usually, here's suddenly a sentence about it, and now we're done with it.
So I do want to read the results of the Should I Read Chick Tracts on the Air. 66% of you said yes. 26% of you said yes, but do it in Klingon. 7% of you said no, and there were 69 votes. Nice.
Ew. Nice.
All right. Seth, what do you got coming up on your channel?
I've got an after show where I'm going to review all that we talked about, and there were some things like with the Masons that I actually have a different viewpoint. I do think that they're satanic, but I think that was probably, and I am concerned about a new world order stuff, but the stuff about vaccines you and I really agree with. I think I learned a lot listening to you talk about the flood and this thing about chromosomal crossover. So bravo to that. And this is why I would encourage creationists to come here, because I've studied population genetics, and some of the terms, you end up being really specialized. And, there's stuff you mentioned here that I learned a lot about. So I'm going to be having an after show. And then in the after show, I'll also talk about how I think young earth creationism can be taught right. And that's why I don't think Kent is a good representative of that.
I agree with you.
It's not.
So I've had, I don't have anything coming up, but you could look at some of my other stuff that I've talked about, the Big Bang and vigor crystals and radiometric dating and quasi-electron, heavy electron quasi-particles. So I invite people to see kind of the difference between me and Kent. And I'd like to thank people in advance who are even
I wouldn't
have
have
any
Kent
curiosity
on my channel, but I've had you on more than once.
So thank you very much. And that's all I have going. And this has been a very educational experience. There's almost always something I will learn when I come to your shows.
Well, thank
So
you.
Thank you.
I do try to make that the case. All right, guys, I'm gonna open up my calendar. Bench, do you have anything you want to plug before we I start plugging stuff?
Yeah, go to Sal's channel and click on subscribe, unless it already says subscribed. If it does, then don't click it, because it'll unsubscribe you. Don't do that.
All right, so let's take a look. Tomorrow, on May the 4th, be with you on my Top Hats Off channel at 4 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Power Rangers Jungle Beast Episode 2 go live, featuring myself, Smitty, who's been in the chat. It has Maddie from Science Side Up. It has TD Lane, who you'll know if you've been paying super close attention to this channel. You might not if you haven't. And it has a few other people it has And the George Said, if you've been watching Batch's RPG streams. It also has a guy, Casey, who I know from Nothing to Do with YouTube. So those are the Jungle Beast Power Rangers. They're going to be fighting a new monster, new scenario, starting tomorrow. We're going to be introducing the Yellow Ranger. There was no Yellow Ranger for episode 1, but we're going to reintroduce him tomorrow. So if you like RPG actual play, go check it out. I've done a lot of work to make sure the production quality is pretty good. There's a lot of really, I think, pretty quality art pieces that are going into the production set. Sorry, all that stuff. Thursday, the second part of the two-part series on Kurt Wise talking about cladistics is going to be coming up. Kurt Wise is going to be telling us why he thinks that pronghorns are a problem for evolution and why the platypus is a problem for evolution. And I'm going to long-windedly explain why I disagree. I already explained why I don't think the red panda is a problem for evolution. Basically, it comes down to Kurt Wise saying, if you don't think that Animal X is in either group A or B, then you're a coward, even if you put it in group C. I disagree with him.
What if you do think those things, but you're still a coward? Are you no
I don't
longer
know.
a coward?
Maybe. Saturday. So I need to double check, but I should be doing some pseudo history and pseudo archaeology stuff on Saturday. I found a fairly interesting video to go over about basically ancient high technology and maybe ancient alien stuff. So we'll take a look at that. Basically, it goes with, hey, the CIA unclassified some weird document about ancient high tech civilizations. So I'm going to take a look at that. Let's see. On the 10th, we should be doing Eric with Erica. So if you like Guts a Given, you like me, and you like Tuesday, and you like drinking streams, check that out on the 10th. I'm not sure about the 12th. It might be the first episode of the Jewish Matt Powell. Because I found a guy who's basically an older Matt Powell, but also Jewish instead of Christian. So that might be what happens on the 12th. And then the 14th will probably be my corrected upload of Evolution 101 Part 3, where hopefully I will remember to make sure that there's sound on the video, because if you were here last week on Saturday, you might remember that I uploaded a 2-hour video that didn't have any sound at all. So, sorry about that, guys. I'm not perfect.
What?
I know. Well, anyway, if you guys are channel members or patrons, feel free to head over to the Discord server for patrons and channel members, because I think we're going to watch some Power Rangers Dino Fury.
Well, and don't forget to floss. It's good for you.
Yeah, don't forget to floss. And brush your teeth.
Yeah.
It's good. Look, oral hygiene is important. All right, guys. We're going to get out of here. Sal, thank you very much. We'll talk to everybody later.
I just want to take a moment to thank all my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovand, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Chris Love, Landon Knoll, Sphincter of Doom, Star Runner, and Patrick Dennis. It's because of my channel members and patrons that this channel can keep on going at the blistering pace of 2 to 3 and almost always 3 uploads per week. And because I do run this channel at a slight loss, it is very important that anyone who can afford to and really likes my content, please do consider joining the Patreon or joining the channel with the link below. Patreon link is in the description. On Patreon, you can join at a 10% discount if you join for an annual subscription. And if for some reason you can't afford it, or an annual or monthly pledge isn't for you, there are always other ways to help out the channel. There's an Amazon wishlist linked in the description. There's also a merch store full of almost everything that Teespring makes. Heck, you can get my face on a onesie. And of course, if monetary support isn't something you can do, please just like and share this video, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget, if you're subscribed, turn on that notification bell.